The alarm lights flashed red inside orbital station Perseus, painting the steel walls in a pulsing glow. Commander Rafe Elson didn't look up from his desk at first. Emergencies happened all the time out here. But the tone of the alarm wasn't one he recognized. It was low, steady, and it made the hair rise on the back of his neck. Before he could ask for a report, his console lit up with an incoming message. It was heavily encrypted, so much so that the system had to cycle through a dozen clearance checks before letting it through. The sender's code made his stomach tighten. It was from Agent Corn Vale, a man Rafe had trained with years ago before Vale vanished into Concord territory as part of a cultural exchange. Rafe hadn't heard from him in almost 3 years. The first line of the message stopped him cold. "We're not workers. We're not guests. We're property." He scrolled, eyes narrowing. Vale had attached hidden camera footage. Rows of humans in torn uniforms hauling massive or carts through tunnels, their necks bound with glowing bands. Others scrubbed alien streets while guards armed with shockstaves watched. In another clip, a human engineer was repairing a massive starship engine, until a guard struck him for slowing down. The man fell and didn't get back up. Vale's written report was worse. For decades, the Concorde had told Earth that its exchange programs were opportunities to learn, to share, to build bridges. In truth, the galaxy's most powerful alliance had voted unanimously to make humans their new slave race. 912 species had agreed, even those who had once been slaves themselves. Rafe's breath came slow and tight. The file contained scanned voting records, supply logs, and something even more chilling, shipping manifests listing humans as biological resources. The numbers made his chest ache. 3 billion names. 3 billion people scattered across alien worlds, treated like tools. And yet, there was something else in Vale's report. Hidden in the margins between the horror was a quiet confidence. Vale had been gathering more than proof of slavery. He'd been stealing blueprints, recording alien security routines, mapping out weak points. He wasn't alone. There were others. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. Rafe's console beeped again. An incoming security override. Someone was trying to access his terminal remotely. He shut the file instantly and yanked the data chip from the slot, slipping it into a thin compartment inside his sleeve. The comm unit on his desk crackled. "Commander Elson, this is Station Control. Concorde security craft are requesting immediate docking. They say it's a routine inspection." Routine. Rafe knew better. Someone had tipped them off. He stood, grabbing his jacket and trying to keep his pace casual as he stepped into the corridor. The air smelled faintly of coolant and metal, and through the viewport ahead he could see the glow of the planet's atmosphere far below. 2 Concorde frigates were already sliding into the docking bays, sleek silver hulls gleaming under the station lights. Their weapons were powered down, but their very presence felt like a threat. The Concorde didn't do random. Not here. Not with him. Rafe took the service lift down 3 decks, bypassing the main security checkpoints. He emerged near the lower cargo hangars, where freight drones hummed and clanked, loading crates into outbound shuttles. The hum of the machinery masked his steps as he made for a small, nondescript transport near the far wall. A ship he had quietly kept fueled and ready for months, just in case. A voice called his name from behind. He didn't turn, just kept walking. The voice came again, firmer. He heard boots on metal closing in. By the time the Concorde officers rounded the corner, Rafe was already inside the shuttle's cockpit. The canopy sealed shut with a hiss. The engines roared to life. A station docking official's voice shouted in his comm to cut power and prepare for boarding. But Rafe was already angling for the launch corridor. The docking bay doors opened, space yawning dark and endless beyond. His hands moved fast over the controls, every movement drilled from years of training. The shuttle shot forward, the station shrinking behind him. As Perseus faded into the distance, Rafe allowed himself a single breath of relief. In his sleeve, the chip pressed warm against his skin. Inside it was the truth the Concorde never wanted Earth to see. 3 billion lives. 3 billion reasons to fight. He keyed in a secure frequency and spoke into the calm Black Star. "This is Elson. I have the package. Repeat, I have the package. There was a pause, then a voice answered. A woman's voice, steady and calm. Copy, Commander. You're clear to proceed. We've been waiting for this moment. Rafe glanced at the stars ahead, countless points of light against the black. Somewhere out there, billions of his people were living under chains, believing no one on Earth remembered them. They were wrong. And soon, the galaxy would learn just how dangerous a forgotten human could be. The stars slid past the shuttle's canopy in thin silver streaks as Rafe pushed the engines to their limit. The hum of the drive filled the cramped cockpit, steady and comforting against the thoughts twisting through his head. Somewhere behind him, Concord security would be tearing through orbital station Perseus, searching for him. They wouldn't find anything. He'd made sure to erase his logs, scrub his quarters, and lock down his access codes before leaving. But they would still know he was gone, and that meant they'd know the stolen files were gone too. The voice from Black Star guided him through a series of blind jumps, each one taking him deeper into the shadow lanes. Uncharted routes kept off all official maps. The Concorde had no reason to patrol these areas. They were dangerous, unstable, and filled with debris fields left from ancient wars, perfect for staying hidden. After the third jump, the starlines snapped back into sharp points and the ship coasted toward a speck of rock orbiting a dead star. From a distance, it looked worthless. Up close, the truth showed itself. An enormous hangar door carved into the asteroid's side, so perfectly concealed that it was invisible unless you knew where to look. As Rafe approached, the hangar began to open, light spilling out into the black. Inside, the cavern stretched wide, its walls lined with ships of every size and shape. Most were patched together from scavenged parts. Human freighters, alien interceptors, stolen shuttles, each bearing the same discrete insignia, a black star against a field of silver. Crew members moved in controlled urgency, unloading cargo, checking weapons, or vanishing into corridors with sealed crates. Rafe set his shuttle down on the far side of the hangar. The canopy hissed open, and before he could step out, a woman in dark tactical armor was already walking toward him. She was tall, her hair pulled back tight, and her eyes held that same calm, unshakable focus he'd heard over the comm. "Commander Elson," she said, stopping just short of him. "Welcome to Black Star Command." Rafe slid from the cockpit, the chip with Vale's report still warm against his skin. "You're the one who answered my call. Director Illyra Vance," she said. "You've brought us something worth risking the Concorde's attention?" Rafe didn't speak. He simply pulled the chip from his sleeve and handed it to her. Illyra took it without ceremony, waving over a technician who whisked it away to be decrypted. They walked together toward a glass-walled briefing room overlooking the hangar. Through the glass, Rafe could see more of the base, dozens of people working at long terminals, others speaking quietly in groups. There were alien faces too, though not many. Most looked wary, keeping to themselves, their movements careful. "Some of them were slaves before we were," Illyra explained when she caught his glance. "Different species, same story. They don't trust easily, but they trust the Concorde less." Rafe nodded. "Vale's report says the vote to enslave us was unanimous." "It was," she said flatly. 912 member species. Not one spoke against it. "You've seen the footage." "I have." He hesitated, then added, "It's worse than I imagined." Illyra stopped in front of a display wall. It lit up with a galactic map as the decrypted data began to feed in from the chip. Concorde territory glowed in deep blue, stretching across thousands of systems. In bright red, small human symbols appeared, each one marking a world where Vale and other operatives had confirmed human slaves. The red marks spread until Rafe felt his stomach sink. "That's only what we've confirmed," Illyra said quietly. "The real number is higher, much higher." The map shifted again, this time showing schematics, alien mining rigs, warship blueprints, and energy grid layouts. "Every one of our embedded agents has been gathering this kind of intel for decades," she continued. "We've been patient, careful. The Concorde thinks we're scattered and powerless. They think we can't fight." "They're wrong," Rafe said. They're very wrong. Illyra's voice held no emotion, only certainty. We have infiltrators in over 300 Concord worlds. We've mapped their military routes, their supply lines, their weaknesses. And we've been building. She gestured to the hangar below, where technicians were loading black, hexagonal cases onto a cargo hauler. Nanotech warheads, quantum disruptors, bioagents keyed to Concord species DNA. All designed so humans are immune. If they force us into war, it won't be a war they understand. Rafe stared at her. And the plan? She met his eyes without flinching. We give them a choice. Return every human, every last one, within 14 days. Pay for what they've done. Or watch their empire fall apart from the inside. He thought of Vale, still trapped out there, pretending to be broken while quietly planting the seeds of destruction. He thought of the men and women on the station who had no idea the people they waved goodbye to were being sold across the stars. The door opened and the technician returned, holding the decrypted chip. "Director, it's worse than we thought," he said. "Vale's files include something else, internal Concord security orders. They've already marked Earth as a secured asset. They're moving to take direct control of our system within a year." Illyra's expression hardened. "Then they've just shortened our timetable." She turned back to Rafe. "You got this here without being caught. That makes you valuable. And we need people we can trust in the field. You in?" Rafe didn't hesitate. "If we're doing this, we're doing it all the way." Illyra's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Good. Because when this starts, there's no turning back." Below them, the hangar crew finished loading the last crate. Engines rumbled, voices shouted over the comms, and somewhere in the dark, 1,000 silent traps waited for a single word to set them in motion. In 14 days, the Concord would either surrender 3 billion human lives, or discover what humans do when they stop pretending to be harmless. The meeting room felt smaller than it was, the air heavy with the weight of what they were planning. Rafe stood near the end of a long table, listening as Illyra called in leaders from every hidden human cell across the galaxy. The wall display lit up with dozens of faces, some human, some from species he didn't recognize but had clearly suffered under the Concord too. Their voices filled the room, sharp and urgent, each one reporting from a different shadow world. One man in rough mining gear spoke first. "We've mapped the power grid on Ranix. Every relay, every control node. When you give the word, the entire capital will go dark." A woman with oil streaked across her cheeks added, "Shipyard at Balearis is operating on minimal guard rotations. We've got access to their fuel storage. One spark and half their fleet will never launch." Rafe listened closely. This wasn't chaos. They'd been building toward this for years, every small act of sabotage part of something much bigger. Each cell had a role, each target chosen for maximum damage with minimum resources. The Concord thought humans were scattered and unorganized. That illusion was about to end. When the reports finished, Illyra stood, her voice carrying over the hum of the equipment. The Concord's strength isn't just its fleet or its technology, it's fear. They keep their subjects obedient because no one believes they can be beaten. That ends now. She tapped the table and a countdown timer appeared. 14 days, counting down to the second. This is how long they have to meet our terms. If they don't, we light every fuse we've planted. Rafe's eyes stayed on the timer. 14 days was nothing in the scale of the galaxy. But here, in the dim light of the asteroid base, it felt like an eternity of waiting. He didn't want to wait. He wanted to move now. But patience was the edge they had. The Concord wouldn't panic if they didn't see the blade coming. Later, walking the lower hangars, he saw what years of quiet preparation looked like up close. Teams in black armor loading sleek canisters into hidden compartments on freighters bound for Concord trade worlds. Pilots running last-minute checks on fighters stripped of every unnecessary system so they could hold more ammunition. Engineers sealing crates that carried nothing but dormant nanotech, disguised as spare parts and harmless goods. Rafe stopped at one workbench where a young tech was assembling what looked like a small, dull gray cube. "What's that?" he asked. The tech glanced up. "Pulse disruptor. Concorde ships rely on synchronized lattice fields for shield harmonics. This throws them out of sync. Shields drop. Just like that. Range? Rafe asked. Depends. In a city, it could shut down a whole defense grid. In space, you drop it close enough to a cruiser, and the next shot will burn straight through. He left the tech to his work, moving deeper into the base. In another chamber, a group of scientists worked over sealed biocontainment units. Rafe didn't have to ask what they held. He could see the red hazard markings. A tall man in a white coat noticed his stare. Targeted pathogens. Non-lethal to humans. Very lethal to the Concorde's leadership species. You're thinking it's too much. Rafe didn't answer right away. He was thinking exactly that. But then he pictured Vale's footage. People beaten in the mines, children wearing collars. I'm thinking they earned it, he said finally. By the time he returned to the command level, the base was quieter. The bustle had slowed, the crews moving with that steady rhythm of people who had done all they could for now. Illyra was in the briefing room, staring at the map as it pulsed with new data feeds. She didn't turn when he stepped in. They're already moving ships, she said. They've picked up whispers something's coming. But they think it's local rebellions, unrest. They don't see the scale yet. That's good, Rafe said. When they do see it, it'll be too late. She turned to him, and in her eyes he saw none of the hesitation he'd felt. You'll be going out soon. We're placing you with one of our strike teams. You'll help trigger the first wave. You're ready for that? Yes, he said without thinking. He wasn't sure if it was courage or fury speaking, but he knew he meant it. Illyra's gaze lingered on him for a moment before she gave a small nod. Then get some rest. You won't have much when the timer hits 0. He left the room and found his way to the narrow bunk assigned to him. The hum of the base was steady through the walls, like a heartbeat in the stone. 14 days. 14 days until they stopped hiding. Somewhere beyond the rock and vacuum, the Concorde still thought of humans as tools, as property. Soon they'd know better. The shuttle dropped out of jump space with a shimmer, and the world of Carthon Prime filled the viewport. It was impossible not to be impressed. The capital of the Concorde stretched across the entire surface of the planet. A single city wrapped in silver towers, domed skylines, and glowing bridges that hung over oceans of green-blue water. Above it all, rings of massive orbital platforms shimmered like a crown, each one bristling with weapons. Ships of every shape and size moved in steady patterns, their paths lit by streams of navigation lights. Rafe sat in the back of the human delegation's transport, hands resting on his knees. Across from him, 2 diplomats murmured to each other, rehearsing formal greetings. He didn't bother. This wasn't a friendly meeting. They were here to deliver terms. The ship's comm chimed, and an alien voice, smooth and confident, spoke in perfect English. Human delegation, this is Carthon Control. You are cleared for descent to Assembly Dock 4. Welcome to the heart of the Concorde. The words made Rafe's jaw tighten. He'd read Vale's files. He knew what had built this city, what had kept those rings shining. Human hands. Human backs bent under labor that never ended. As the ship dropped into the upper atmosphere, he thought of the slaves who had polished those towers and carved those bridges, never knowing if anyone would come for them. The docking bay was a massive, circular chamber carved into the side of a skyscraper that seemed to touch the clouds. Dozens of alien officials waited at the edge of the landing pad. Their colors, shapes, and sizes varied wildly, but Rafe saw the same look in every set of alien eyes, curiosity without respect. They were escorted through wide, echoing halls into the assembly chamber. It was a vast arena, its seats rising in tiers around a central floor. Every seat was filled. Representatives from over 900 species leaned forward in interest as the humans entered. To them, Earth was still new to the galactic stage, a novelty and experiment. Rafe could almost hear their unspoken thoughts. Let's see what the primitives have to say. At the center of the chamber stood the Concorde's high speaker, a tall, 4-armed figure draped in flowing silver cloth. His voice carried easily across the room. Delegates from Earth, you have been granted audience. Present your words. Ambassador Lyra Hale stepped forward, her face calm but her tone unyielding. High Speaker, members of the Concord, we come with evidence of crimes committed against our people. We come with demands for justice. She tapped a control on her wrist, and the chamber's central display came alive. Images flickered across it, humans in mines, in factories, in alien homes. Men and women in chains, eyes empty, bodies broken. The sound of it filled the chamber. The clang of picks on rock, the crack of whips, the low murmur of voices begging in a dozen languages. Gasps came from some seats, laughter from others. Many aliens simply looked bored. For decades, Lyra said, you told us our people were here by choice. You called it exchange. You called it opportunity. You lied. 3 billion humans are enslaved across your worlds. We demand their immediate return. We demand reparations for 50 years of suffering. And we demand it now. The High Speaker tilted his head slowly. And if we do not? Lyra's voice did not waver. Then the Concord will learn how dangerous it is to back humanity into a corner. A low ripple of laughter moved through the chamber. One delegate leaned forward, speaking into the open channel. You think your small fleet can threaten the Concord? You have no allies, no power worth naming. Rafe stepped forward before Lyra could answer. You've made a mistake, he said, letting his voice carry. You think we're here to negotiate. We're not. We're here to give you 14 days. Return every human, pay what you owe, and dismantle your slave system. Or you'll see exactly what we've been building while you weren't looking. The High Speaker's eyes narrowed. You threaten the peace of the galaxy. No, Rafe said. You ended peace the moment you chained the first of us. For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then the laughter returned, louder this time, echoing against the high walls. The High Speaker raised a hand for quiet, his tone dripping with amusement. 14 days. Very well, humans. We will mark the time. But when it passes, you will see that your threats are dust. Rafe looked at the sea of alien faces, memorizing them. They thought they were untouchable. They thought this was theater. 14 days from now, they would learn it was a countdown. As the human delegation turned to leave, Rafe caught the faintest flicker of unease in a few alien eyes. Those who remembered what Earth was. Those who knew what a Deathworld produced. Back aboard the transport, Lyra exhaled slowly. They won't take us seriously. They will, Rafe said. Just not yet. The ship lifted from the dock, breaking back into the open sky. Behind them, Carthon Prime gleamed in the sun, a city built on chains. Ahead of them was the cold black where plans had already been set in motion. The clock was ticking. The asteroid base never slept. Cargo haulers came and went. Crews moved in tight lines carrying sealed containers, and the low rumble of engines mixed with the steady hum of power generators. Rafe stepped off the shuttle from Carthon Prime and was met by Illyra before he'd even cleared the landing bay. One look at her face told him she already knew how the meeting had gone. They laughed, he said simply. Her jaw tightened. Good. That means they still think we're bluffing. They walked through the main corridor toward the command deck. Along the way, Rafe saw more of the operation coming alive. Mechanics welded fresh armor plates onto strike craft. A row of small freighters was being fitted with hidden compartments, their outward appearance kept dull and harmless. In one corner of the hangar, a group of engineers gathered around a disassembled alien turret, stripping it for parts. Everyone moved with the quiet urgency of people who knew the exact number of days left on the clock. On the command deck, a massive holographic map floated in the air. Red dots marked confirmed slave worlds, and glowing lines showed the Concord's major shipping routes. Now new symbols appeared, small white flares marking the locations of embedded human agents. The number made Rafe's breath catch. 217 confirmed, Illyra said, reading his look. And that's just the ones we have direct contact with. The real number's higher. A voice crackled over the comm from one of the remote teams. Black Star Command, this is Cell Theta 7. Package is in place on Veltris Prime. Local Concord patrols haven't noticed a thing. Illyra responded without hesitation. Copy Theta 7. Stay dark until the signal. She turned back to Rafe. Veltris Prime builds the Concorde's engine cores. When those go offline, half their fleet will be dead in space. The next report came from a deep cover agent in the Concorde's inner worlds. Command, we've compromised a main node in the quantum relay network. When you're ready, we can spread the disruptor to every system in range. Rafe listened as one cell after another checked in. Weapons hidden in agricultural shipments. Nanotech slipped into raw or consignments. Targeted bioagents frozen into medical supply crates. Every shipment timed. Every location chosen to strike at the Concorde's spine. Even with all that, the Concorde's fleet was still a massive problem. Reports showed thousands of warships already leaving their ports, forming into strike groups aimed at Sol. On the holomap, those fleets glowed like approaching storms. They're pulling ships from everywhere, Illyra said. That means they're leaving their supply worlds underdefended. The moment they commit everything to Sol, our people hit the heart. Rafe studied the map. They'll hit us with everything they've got, thinking a single blow will end us. They don't realize, she said, that we want them to come here. We've turned the system into a trap. Down in the lower bays, Rafe joined a squad prepping for deployment. His team leader, a broad-shouldered man with a burn scar across his cheek, tossed him a small metal case. 3 pulse disruptors. Plant them in defense grid hubs. Once they trigger, their shields drop and won't come back. Rafe checked the seals on his case and strapped it to his pack. Around him, the others moved quietly, their gear already worn from years of hiding and fighting in shadows. These weren't soldiers trained on parade grounds, they were miners, smugglers, engineers, survivors. But every one of them had something the Concorde's elite troops didn't. They'd been on the wrong end of a whip, and they'd lived to remember it. Hours later, the strike team's transports lifted away from the asteroid, vanishing into the dark on different vectors. Each ship would slip into Concorde space under the cover of old smuggling routes. They would wait. And when the signal came, they would hit their targets within minutes of each other. Rafe's transport was a rust-colored freighter with a false registry and fake cargo logs. He sat in the dim light of the crew compartment, the low thrum of the engines a steady background to his thoughts. 14 days had already dropped to 9. Every hour brought the Concorde's fleets closer to Sol and brought his team closer to the heart of enemy territory. The comm unit beeped once, a short coded burst from Black Star Command. A new development. Rafe keyed in the encrypted feed, and Illyra's voice came through. We've intercepted Concorde chatter. There's division in the High Assembly. Some want to attack immediately. Others think Earth is bluffing and want to wait. If that split widens, they'll be too busy fighting each other to notice us moving. Rafe allowed himself a thin smile. Good. The more they argue, the less they see coming. As the ship drifted deeper into the black, he closed his eyes and pictured the assembly chamber again. The way they'd laughed. The way they'd looked down on him as if he were already beaten. Soon, those same faces would be lit by panic, not amusement. And when that moment came, he planned to be close enough to see it happen. The signal came at noon, marked only by a single word flashing on Rafe's wrist display. Execute. There was no fanfare, no speeches, just the quiet confirmation that the waiting was over. His team was crouched in the shadow of a Concorde defense tower on Veltris Prime, the air around them thick with the smell of ozone from the city's shield generators. Above, the sky shimmered faintly where the energy barrier met the clouds. Rafe nodded once, and the squad moved. 2 slipped into the tower's maintenance access while Rafe and the Scarface team leader covered the street. The city was busy, alien workers and drones going about their day with no idea the world beneath their feet was about to fall apart. Inside the tower, the pulse disruptors were placed on the main shield control nodes. A soft chime told them the timers were set. 3 blocks away, another cell was already at work in the central power station. The moment the disruptors went off, the station's safety systems would fail, sending the entire grid into chaos. The first blast came like a heartbeat, one sharp pulse that rippled across the city. The sky's shimmer collapsed, the shield barrier flickering out. A second pulse followed, and half the lights in the city went dark. Distant alarms began to howl. Rafe's earpiece filled with overlapping voices from strike teams all over the planet. Nanotech released in Foundry District. Bioagent dispersal complete in Sector 12. Enemy comms down. Repeat. Enemy comms down. Veltris Prime was only one world. The same thing was happening across hundreds of others all at once. On the ocean world of Karen, Concord naval bases sat powerless while human divers flooded their underwater hangars with corrosive agents. On the industrial moon of Relvik, automated assembly lines jammed as sabotage programs tore through their systems. Back on Veltris, Rafe's team pulled back toward the spaceport. Concord troops were already mobilizing, their silver armor catching the dim light as they moved in formation. But without shields, without power grids, they were slower, less coordinated. Rafe caught sight of something in the distance, one of the massive shipyards, a place Vale had marked as critical in his reports. As they moved closer, they saw black smoke rising from its main gantries. The squad leader let out a short laugh. Looks like we're not the only ones busy today. Above the city, the sky filled with streaks of fire as sabotaged patrol craft fell from orbit. One slammed into the outskirts, sending up a rolling cloud of dust and debris. Concord civilians scattered in every direction. Rafe tapped his comm to the fleet channel. Black Star Command, Veltris Prime Grid is down. Shipyards burning. Moving to secondary target. Illyra's voice came back, sharp and calm. Confirmed. Similar reports from every sector. Concord response is fragmented. Fleet is still inbound toward Sol. Across the galaxy, the scale of the strike became clear. Concord command relays flickered out. Core worlds sent distress signals into a void of silence. Entire planetary defense networks went offline in seconds, leaving cities open to anything that came next. On the far side of the Veltri spaceport, Rafe's squad planted the last disruptor inside the port's docking control hub. When it detonated, half the ships locked to their clamps were torn free, drifting into each other in slow-motion collisions. The sound of tearing metal and exploding fuel echoed through the port as fires spread. The squad leader's voice came low. That's it. We've done our part. They boarded their freighter and lifted off, climbing through the smoke into the upper atmosphere. From here, the city looked like a grid of broken lights, with pockets of fire glowing against the dark. As they cleared the planet, Rafe switched to the wideband channel. Dozens of voices filled it. Reports from every human cell across Concord space. Mines collapsing on slave worlds. Orbital platforms falling from their stations. Bioagents wiping out command structures. The Concord had been hit everywhere at once, and nothing in their history had prepared them for it. One voice cut through the chatter. It was Vale himself, his tone tight with excitement. This is Vale on Drenner 4. The governor's palace is gone. The guards surrendered without a fight. We're freeing the last of our people here now. Rafe leaned back in his seat, the adrenaline still rushing in his veins. It was working. The Concord's power was breaking. But he knew it wasn't over. Not yet. The fleet was still coming to Sol, and that fight would be different. Illyra's voice came back over the command frequency. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 begins now. All units move to fallback positions and prepare for counterattack. And remember, this is only the start. Rafe looked out at the stars, thinking of Carthon Prime, thinking of the High Speaker's smug face. Soon, that city in the clouds would burn like Veltris Prime. Soon, the laughter would stop. The Concord fleet arrived in Sol like a wall of metal and fire. Thousands of warships poured out of jump space, their formation so vast it blotted out entire swaths of the stars. From the command deck of the asteroid base, Rafe watched the tactical display flare red with incoming targets. The sheer number was staggering, rows upon rows of enemy icons filling the edges of the solar system. Admiral Vance's voice cut through the tension. All stations, defensive grid online. Prepare to execute planetary shield activation on my mark. In orbit around Earth, the massive shield emitters lit up, casting pale arcs of light until the entire planet shimmered under a protective dome. Out near the asteroid belt, Hidden thrusters roared to life, pushing millions of rocks into carefully calculated paths. The enemy thought the belt was just debris. They didn't realize each rock carried guidance systems and enough explosives to punch through a battleship's hull. The Concorde moved in quickly, their leading ships opening fire on the outer defenses. Blinding streaks of energy lanced across space, cutting through anything in their way. But the first wave hit the weaponized asteroids, and the result was chaos. Kinetic strikes ripped holes clean through alien cruisers, sending them spinning. Entire carriers broke apart under the relentless impacts. Rafe's comm buzzed with reports. Outer grid holding. Enemy casualties mounting. They weren't ready for this. In the middle of the battle, the moon itself came alive. Its surface split open to reveal vast rail cannons and missile silos. The first salvo tore through the Concorde's central formation, vaporizing ships in lines of bright explosions. Their formations wavered, but they pressed forward, trying to reach Earth before the outer grid could collapse. On the asteroid base, Vance's tone was steady but urgent. Activate secondary defenses. Launch all strike craft. From hidden bays across the solar system, hundreds of small, fast human fighters shot into the fight. They darted between the larger alien ships, delivering precision strikes to weapon mounts and engine cores. In their wake, Concorde vessels went dark, drifting powerless into the void. Rafe focused on his sector, relaying orders to ground-based artillery teams on Mars. The planet's surface guns opened fire, launching massive tungsten slugs at enemy battleships. The Concorde tried to adjust, but every time they shifted formation, the human defenses adapted faster. Then came the moment Rafe had been waiting for. Wideband transmission from Illyra, her voice cold and clear. Signal to all embedded cells. Phase 3, execute. Across the galaxy, sabotage teams still hidden on Concorde world struck again. Enemy command relays went down. Fleet supply lines were severed. And in the middle of the Sol battle, the Concorde's long-range communications suddenly died. Their ships were cut off, unable to coordinate. Rafe watched the tactical map light up with new explosions as Concorde ships collided or were ambushed by human fighters. The battle was turning. On the enemy flagship, long-range scanners must have shown the truth. Entire sectors of Concorde space were going dark. Shipyards gone. Supply fleets gone. Command centers in flames. Their home world silent. But still, the flagship pushed forward, flanked by what was left of their heaviest cruisers. They were aiming straight for Earth. Bring the lunar batteries to full power, Vance ordered. Rafe's heart pounded as the moon's railguns aligned. With a single synchronized volley, they fired. The flagship's shields buckled, then collapsed entirely. A second volley ripped through its core, and the massive vessel exploded in a burst of light that seemed to hang in space. The remaining cruisers faltered, their formation breaking apart. That was the moment it ended. Some enemy ships fled, others powered down and surrendered. Many were destroyed where they drifted. Within hours, the largest fleet the Concorde had ever assembled was nothing but debris. Silence settled over the command deck. The battle for Sol was over. Humanity had held. In the days that followed, the last Concorde fleets across the galaxy either surrendered or disappeared into uncharted space. Human strike teams moved from world to world, freeing the remaining slaves and dismantling the last of the enemy strongholds. News spread fast. There would be no more chains, no more auctions, no more lies about exchange programs. Weeks later, Rafe stood on the rebuilt assembly floor on Carthon Prime. The city above was in ruins, but here, among the scorched marble and shattered glass, representatives from freed species gathered for the first Council of Free Worlds. He looked at the crowd, humans and aliens alike, and spoke simply. The Concorde thought we were harmless. They thought we would kneel. Instead, we stood. We fought. And we won. From this day forward, slavery dies in this galaxy. Any who try to bring it back will face what the Concorde faced. And they will not survive it. There was no cheering, only a deep, heavy silence as his words sank in. Everyone in that chamber knew what had been done to win this war. Everyone knew the cost. Later, standing alone at the edge of the council balcony, Rafe looked out over the battered skyline. The air was still hazy from the fires, but beyond the smoke, the stars were sharp and clear. Somewhere out there were billions of freed lives, beginning again. The galaxy would remember what happened here. And if it forgot, humanity would be there to remind it. The war was over, but the warning would last forever.